You know the feeling. It arrives somewhere around 6 p.m. on a Sunday. You've had a decent weekend. You've rested. You laughed. You existed like a human being for 48 hours. And then, like clockwork, it shows up. A low, heavy dread. Not panic, not crisis, just dread. The creepy awareness that tomorrow the alarm goes off and the whole thing starts again. The commute, or the login screen, or the fluorescent lights, or the meetings that achieve nothing, or the manager who makes you feel invisible, or the work that feels completely disconnected from anything you care about. And you think to yourself, is this it? If you've ever had that thought, this essay is for you. Not because I'm going to tell you to quit your job tomorrow. Not because I'm going to give you a motivational speech about following your passion and trusting the universe. And definitely not because the answer is simple. It isn't. But here's what I will tell you. Hating your job is not a personality trait. It's a signal. And signals, when you know how to read them, point you towards action. The right kind of action. The kind that actually changes things instead of just making you feel better for a week. This essay is about how to read that signal, how to figure out what it's actually telling you, and then how to respond to it with the strategic intelligence of someone who wants to win, not just escape. Because there's a massive difference between winning and escaping. Most people who hate their jobs escape. They rage quit into uncertainty. They jump sideways into a different version of the same problem. They stay paralyzed for years, telling themselves they'll do something about it eventually, while the dread deepens into something harder to name. Winners, the people who end up genuinely fulfilled in their work, do something different. They diagnose before they prescribe. They build before they burn. They move towards something instead of just away from something. That's what we're going to learn here. Part 1. Stop. Diagnose before you prescribe. Why most people get this wrong from the start. When people hate their job, the immediate instinct is to ask, how do I get out? Wrong question. The right question, the one almost nobody asks first, is, why do I hate this? This distinction is not semantic. It is the entire game. Because here's what most people find when they escape a job they hate without diagnosing the source of the hatred. They end up in another job they hate. Different company, different title, different office, same feeling. Why? Because the problem wasn't the job. It was something underneath the job. Something portable. Something they carried with them into the next role and the one after that. The most important thing you can do before you take any action, before you update your resume, before you talk to a recruiter, before you start a side hustle, is sit down and get brutally honest about exactly what it is you hate and why. The 6 root causes of job misery. Virtually all job misery traces back to one or more of 6 root causes. Understanding which one is operating in your situation determines everything about what you should do next. Root cause 1, the work itself. You fundamentally dislike what you actually do for 8 hours a day. The tasks, the problems, the domain, they don't engage you. They drain you. You feel no interest, no curiosity, no sense of meaning in the actual work. This is the most fundamental mismatch, and is the one least likely to be fixed by a better manager, a raise, or a change of company. If the work itself is the problem, the solution involves changing the work. Root cause 2, the people. The work is fine, maybe even good, but the people make it unbearable. A toxic manager who micromanages or belittles you. Colleagues who are petty, political, or passive-aggressive. A culture of fear, gossip, or mediocrity that grinds against who you are. This is critically important to distinguish from root cause 1 because the solution is completely different. If the work is good and only the people are bad, you may not need to change careers at all. You may just need to change environments. Root cause 3, the growth ceiling. You used to like this job. You were challenged, learning, improving, but somewhere along the way, you hit a ceiling. The learning stopped. The challenges became repetitive. That work that used to stretch you now bores you because you've mastered it. People in this situation often mistake boredom for hatred. They think they hate their job when what they actually hate is stagnation. The solution is about expansion, not escape. Root cause 4, the misalignment of values. You do the work, you tolerate the people, but something deeper feels wrong. The company does things you find ethically questionable. The culture rewards behaviors you don't respect. You can't align what you're being asked to do with who you believe yourself to be. This is perhaps the most corrosive kind of job misery because it attacks identity, not just comfort. It tends to produce the deepest, most persistent kind of Sunday night dread because on some level, you know the situation isn't just difficult, it's wrong. Root cause 5, the compensation mismatch. You might actually like the work, the people, even the company, but you feel profoundly undervalued financially. You know your market rate, you know what your skills are worth, and you know you're not getting it. The resentment that builds from this kind of misalignment is real and legitimate. This is also one of the most solvable problems on this list, which is why it's worth isolating before assuming the whole situation is broken. Root cause 6, the burnout collapse. You're not sure you hate the job. You're not sure you hate anything. You're just empty. Exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Disconnected from things that used to matter. Emotionally flat in a way that scares you a little. This is burnout. And it is a medical reality, not a weakness. When you are burnt out, you cannot accurately assess whether you hate your job or hate what the job has done to you. These are not the same thing, and they require entirely different responses. The diagnosis exercise. Before moving forward, do this exercise. It takes 30 minutes and it will save you years. Take a blank page. At the top, write the question. What specifically makes me dread this job? Then write continuously for 15 minutes without editing. Every specific grievance. Every specific moment that made you feel terrible. Every specific thing you wish were different. When you're done, go through the list and tag each item with one of the 6 root causes. Look for the pattern. Where do most of your grievances cluster? That cluster is your diagnosis, and your diagnosis determines your prescription. Part 2, the 3 paths forward. Once you've diagnosed the root cause, there are exactly 3 paths available to you. Path 1, fix it. Address the root cause without leaving. Path 2, leave it. Exit deliberately and strategically. Path 3, build past it. Create an exit while still inside, building your next thing from within the safety of a paycheck. Each path is right for specific situations and wrong for others. Let's go through all 3. Part 3, Path 1, fix it. When staying is the right answer. This is the path most people skip. When you're miserable, the last thing you want to hear is maybe you should stay and try to fix it. But hear me out, because for a significant number of people, this is the highest leverage move available. There's a concept in physics called the path of least resistance. In careers, the path of least resistance is always to leave. Leaving is easy. Leaving is dramatic. Leaving feels decisive. But leaving a situation you haven't genuinely tried to fix is not decisive. It's avoidant. and avoidance is a habit that follows you. How to fix a toxic manager situation. The single most common reason people hate their jobs is a bad manager. And the first question to ask is, have you actually addressed this directly? Most people haven't. They've complained about it to their partner. They've vented about it to colleagues. They've rehearsed the conversation in their head 100 times. But they haven't had the direct, professional, specific conversation with their manager about what is not working and what they need. This conversation is terrifying. It is also, in many cases, transformative. Not because it always works. Sometimes managers are genuinely toxic and the situation is genuinely unsalvageable, but because you cannot know whether it works until you've tried. And until you've tried, leaving is running away, not moving forward. The structure of the conversation is simple. State what you've observed specifically, without accusation. When X happens, I find it difficult to do my best work because Y. State what you need. What would help me is Z. Ask for their perspective. I value understanding how you see this. Then listen. This conversation will feel uncomfortable. It will also give you information you cannot get any other way. Either the situation is fixable, and now you're beginning fixing it, or it's not, and now you know it's time to leave, with the moral clarity of someone who tried. How to fix a stagnation problem. If your diagnosis is the growth ceiling, boredom, lack of challenge, skills atrophying, the solution before leaving is to aggressively seek expansion within your current organization. Most companies are desperate for people who proactively take on more. Most people sit inside their job description and wait to be given more responsibility. The person who walks into their manager's office and says, I've mastered what I'm currently doing. I want to take on X project, lead Y initiative, or develop Z skill. What would it take to make that happen? That person gets opportunities that nobody else knew existed. The job that feels like a dead end from where you're currently standing may look completely different from 3 rungs up that ladder. But you won't find out if you don't climb. How to fix a compensation problem. This one is the most straightforwardly solvable and the most consistently avoided. People would rather suffer in silence for years than have a direct conversation about money. First, know your market rate with precision, not a rough sense, precise numbers. Use LinkedIn salary, Glassdoor, industry reports, and conversations with peers in similar roles. Know what someone with your skills and experience earns in your market. Second, build your case. Document your contributions. Quantify your impact where possible. Specific numbers, specific projects, specific ways you've created value. Third, have the conversation. Directly, professionally, without apology. Based on my research and my contributions to the team, I believe my compensation should be X. I'd like to discuss how we get there. One of the 2 things happens. They meet you, fully or partially, and the resentment dissolves, or they don't, and now you have a clear, data-backed reason to go find someone who will. Either way, you've moved forward. Part 4, path to leave it. When leaving is the right answer, and how to do it without destroying yourself. Sometimes the honest answer is the situation is not fixable. The manager is genuinely abusive and HR has failed to act. The values mismatch is fundamental and non-negotiable. The work itself is categorically wrong for who you are. The company is declining and no amount of personal performance will change your trajectory inside it. When leaving is the right answer, and it often is, the question becomes, how do you leave well? Because there is a right way and a catastrophically wrong way to exit a job you hate. The wrong way to leave. The wrong way to leave is emotionally, reactively, with drama. You have a terrible meeting on a Thursday afternoon, and by Friday morning, you've submitted your resignation with a pointed note about the company's culture and leadership. You've told 3 colleagues exactly what you think of the manager. You've posted something cryptic on LinkedIn about new chapters that everyone can decode. This feels incredible in the moment. It costs you more than you know. Industries are smaller than they appear. Managers talk to each other. The colleagues you vented to become your interviewers' golf partners in 3 years. The bridge you burned with drama is the one you needed to cross to get to the opportunity you actually wanted. Emotional exits are a luxury you cannot afford, no matter how justified they feel. The right way to leave. The right way to leave is strategically, completely, and without burning a single bridge. Step 1. Decide with your head, not your emotions. Do not resign during or immediately after an emotional event at work. Give yourself a minimum of 72 hours after any significant triggering incident before making any permanent decisions. Your emotional brain and your strategic brain are different instruments. Major decisions require the strategic one. Step 2. Have something to go to before you leave what you're leaving. This sounds obvious. It is violated constantly. I'll figure it out once I'm free is a sentence that has cost people months of financial stress, desperation-driven bad decisions, and gaps on a resume that raise questions. Leaving into a void is always more expensive than it looks from inside. Have an offer, have a plan, or have substantial financial runway before you submit that resignation. Step 3. Exit with professionalism and grace regardless of what you feel inside. Full notice period honored, or more if possible. Work quality maintained through the last day. Exit interviews answered honestly, but constructively. You can tell the truth about problems without delivering it as an indictment. Genuine gratitude expressed for what was good, even if that list is short. Final handshakes given with the warmth of someone who understands that professional life is long and interconnected. The way you leave a job is your reputation, and your reputation is the most valuable asset you carry from role to role. How to actually find the next thing. Your network is your net worth. 80% of jobs, especially good ones, are never publicly posted. They're filled through referrals, through conversations, through the ambient network of people who know what's available before it's a listing. If you are only applying to posted jobs, you are competing in the most crowded, most filtered, and most automated channel available against hundreds or thousands of other applicants for the positions that couldn't be filled any other way. The better strategy is to activate your network with intention. This does not mean mass messaging everyone you've ever met with, "I'm looking for opportunities." That's noise. It means identifying 20 to 30 people in your network who are connected to the industries, companies, or roles you want, and having genuine, specific, value-forward conversations with them. Not, "Can you get me a job?" But, "I'm thinking about moving towards X. You've been in this space for a while. I'd love 30 minutes of your perspective on what the landscape looks like and where you see the real opportunities." People love to give advice. They love to feel like an expert. And they remember the people who asked good questions and listened well. That's how opportunities that were never posted get created for people who were ready for them. Know what you're looking for before you start looking. This sounds self-evident. Almost nobody does it. Most people's job search criteria are essentially anything better than what I have now. With that as your filter, you will systematically end up in roles that are marginally better in the ways you hated the last one, but introduce entirely new problems you didn't anticipate. Before you start looking, write down with specificity what you want the next role to look like across 5 dimensions: the work itself, the environment, the people, the growth trajectory, and the compensation and logistics. With these 5 dimensions clearly defined, you now have a filter. And the filter is the difference between a job search that ends in a good outcome and one that ends in, I traded one set of problems for another. Part 5, Path 3, Build Past It. The most underrated strategy nobody talks about. Here's the path that most people overlook because it requires the most patience and produces the most freedom. Build past your job while you're still in it. Build the skills, the reputation, the financial cushion, and potentially even the income streams that will eventually make the job optional, while you still have the stability of the paycheck that funds the whole operation. This strategy is not for everyone. It requires a specific mindset, the ability to tolerate an uncomfortable present in service of a much better future, the discipline to do the job adequately during the day and then invest hours outside of it in building toward what comes next, the emotional resilience to not let resentment of the current situation bleed into sabotage of the future opportunity. But for the people who can execute it, and more people can than think they can, it produces outcomes that no other strategy delivers. Because you don't just escape the job you hate, you build something that means you never have to depend on a job you hate again. The 4 building blocks of the exit strategy. Building block 1, the financial runway. Freedom is expensive. This is the thing people who romanticize quitting fail to internalize. Freedom, real freedom, the kind where you can take 6 months to figure out what you want, or the kind where you can turn down a bad opportunity because you don't need the money, costs money. Specifically, it costs a minimum of 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved as pure buffer. Not invested, not in retirement accounts, liquid, accessible, sitting there for your runway. For most people, that's somewhere between $15,000 and $50,000. Here's the reframe. You are not saving for an emergency fund. You are buying your freedom. You are purchasing the ability to make decisions about your career from a position of power rather than desperation. Every dollar you save is a unit of future leverage. And while you're building that runway, your miserable job is funding your liberation. That's a mindset shift that makes the day-to-day much more bearable. Building block 2, the skills stack. If you left your job tomorrow, what evidence exists in the world that you can do what you say you can do? Not a resume, not a job title, not a degree from 10 years ago. Evidence, real, demonstratable, portfolioable evidence that you have the skills to create value in the direction you want to go. For most people, the honest answer is not much. This is not a moral failing, it's a positioning problem. And positioning problems are solvable with deliberate action over time. The question to answer is, what skills do I need to build to become compelling to the people I want to work with or for? Then build them systematically in the hours outside of your current job, through courses, through personal projects, through freelance work, through building things in public that demonstrate your capability. The modern economy does not reward credentials alone. It rewards demonstrated capability. And demonstrated capability, unlike a degree or title, can be built by anyone, from anywhere, at any pace, with the resources available to virtually every person with an internet connection. Building block 3, the reputation asset. Your professional reputation is the most powerful career asset you own, and most people treat it as something that happens to them rather than something they deliberately construct. In the context of building past a job you hate, reputation building means one primary thing: creating visibility for your expertise outside the walls of your current employer. Writing publicly about the problems you solve and the things you know. Building an audience on a platform where the people you want to reach are spending their attention. Speaking at industry events or local meetups. Contributing to communities where your future peers gather. Creating work that lives on the internet and says, long after you posted it, this person knows what they're talking about. The goal is simple. When you're ready to make your move, you want the people who matter to already know your name. You want to be known quantity, not a cold application. Opportunities flow to reputations. Build yours now from wherever you are with whatever time you have. Building block 4, the alternative income stream. An alternative income stream, even a small one, fundamentally alters your relationship to your current job. If your current job pays you $5,000 a month and you have zero income from any other source, that job has enormous power over you. Any threat to it is existential. You tolerate things you shouldn't because you cannot afford not to. If your current job pays you $5,000 a month and you have a side project generating $500 a month, just 10% of your income, your relationship to that job shifts immediately. It's not essential anymore. It's one of several sources, and you'll feel the shift in your spine. If that side project grows to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per month, the calculation keeps changing. The power dynamic keeps shifting until one day the number flips and the job becomes the side income to your main thing. This is the path that generates not just a different job, but a categorically different relationship to work and money. It takes years. It is worth every one of them. Part 6, the burnout case, a separate playbook. Why burnout requires a different response than misery. Burnout deserves its own section because it is the one case where the strategic approach I've been describing can actually make things worse before it makes them better. Here's the problem with burnout and strategy. When you are genuinely burnt out, your brain's execution function is impaired. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that handles long-term thinking, impulse control, and complex decision-making, is running on fumes. You are not equipped to make major life decisions from this state. Not because you're weak, because you're psychologically depleted. The strategic moves, negotiating, planning, building, and positioning, all require the exact cognitive resources that burnout has depleted. So before strategy, there must be recovery. The burnout recovery protocol. First, acknowledge what's happening without shame. Burnout is not a weakness. It is a psychological state that results from sustained output without adequate recovery. Pretending you're fine when you're not extends the timeline and deepens the damage. Second, protect sleep with ferocity. Sleep is the primary mechanism by which the brain recovers from the kind of sustained stress that produces burnout. 7 to 9 hours is not a target, it is a floor. Everything else comes after this. Third, eliminate non-essential cognitive load wherever possible. Every decision you don't have to make is energy you keep to keep. Every commitment you can cancel or defer is a space for recovery. For a season, maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple months, the goal is simplicity, not optimization. Fourth, move your body every day. Exercise is one of the most effective neurological interventions available for restoring the cognitive and emotional function that burnout depletes. Even a 20-minute walk counts. Do it every day without exception. Fifth, reconnect with the things that make you feel like a human being rather than a productivity unit. Relationships, creative expression, time in nature, activities that have no outcome attached to them. The goal is to remember what it feels like to exist without performing. Only after you've stabilized, after sleep has returned, after some basic energy has been restored, after you can think clearly enough to assess your situation with something resembling accuracy, should you begin the diagnosis and the strategy. Making major career decisions while burnt out is like navigating with a broken compass. Fix the compass first. Part 7. The psychology of staying too long. Why smart, ambitious people get stuck in jobs they hate for years. Here's one of the most painful and least discussed phenomena in career psychology. People who are smart, high-performing, and genuinely capable are often the ones who stay in jobs they hate the longest. Not because they can't leave, because they're too good at surviving. They adapt, they find coping mechanisms, they get really skilled at separating their work self from their real self. They build compartments. They optimize for endurance in a situation that deserves to be changed. And year by year, the gap between who they are at work and who they are everywhere else widens. Until one day, they look in the mirror and have genuine difficulty recognizing the person who went to work this morning. This is the slow erosion of occupational misery, and it is arguably more dangerous than the acute kind, because the acute kind at least demands a response. The chronic kind just grinds. The sunk cost trap. I've already put 8 years into this. I can't walk away from that. This sentence, or some version of it, is one of the most expensive thoughts a person can have. The 8 years are gone. They are not retrievable. They have no bearing on whether the next 8 years should be spent in the same situation. The only question that matters is, given where you are right now, what is the best possible use of your next year? Not your last 8, your next one. Sunk costs are for accountants to record and humans to ignore when making decisions about the future. The moment you've spent more time than you should in a situation, you know you need to leave. You have sunk a cost. The question is how much more you're willing to add to it. The identity enmeshment problem. Sometimes people stay in jobs they hate because somewhere along the way, the job became their identity. The title, the company name, the status, these things get woven into the story of who you are. And leaving them means confronting a terrifying question. Who am I without this? This is not a career problem. This is a self-concept problem. And it requires the kind of work that involves sitting with that question honestly and beginning to construct an identity that doesn't depend on professional role or status for its foundation. Because here's the danger of building your identity on your job title. Jobs end. Companies fold. Industries transform. The external structures on which you've built your sense of self are radically less stable than they appear. The most resilient professional identity is built on values, skills, and character. Things you carry with you regardless of what your business card says. The comfort of the familiar devil. There's a reason the phrase, better the devil you know than the devil you don't, has survived for centuries. It describes a real human psychological bias, the preference for a known negative over an unknown that might be negative. The job you hate is at least predictable. You know its rhythms. You know how to manage its frustrations. You know which battles are worth fighting and which aren't. The new path, the unknown, these carry the anxiety of uncertainty. The solution is not to eliminate the anxiety. It is to recognize that it is a feature of forward movement, not a signal that forward movement is wrong. Anxiety about leaving is not the universe telling you to stay. It's your nervous system doing what nervous systems do when confronted with change. Feel it. Acknowledge it. Take the step anyway. Part 8. Designing work you don't hate. The longer game, beyond just finding the next job. Everything we've covered so far is tactical. How to assess, how to exit, how to transition. But there's a deeper question underneath all of it that deserves attention. How do you design a professional life that you actually want to live? Not just a job you tolerate, not just a role that pays better or has a nicer manager, a professional life where Monday mornings feel different, where the work feels connected to something real in you, where the Sunday night feeling is one of mild anticipation rather than dread. This is not a fantasy. It is a design problem. And like all design problems, it starts with knowing your requirements. The 4 quadrants of work satisfaction. People are most satisfied with their work when 4 things are simultaneously true. First, the work draws on their strengths. They spend the majority of their time doing things that they are generally good at, things that energize rather than deplete them. Second, the work produces visible results. They can see the impact of what they do, with feedback loops that tell them when they're doing well. Third, the work connects to something they value. It doesn't need to be a spiritual calling, but it needs to connect to things they care about. And fourth, the environment rewards and recognizes the person they actually are, not a performance of who they think they should be, but who they genuinely are. When all 4 are present, work feels good, sometimes even extraordinary. When one is absent, something feels off in a way that's hard to articulate but impossible to ignore. Know your strengths. Actually know them. Most people have a vague sense of what they're good at. I'm a people person. I'm analytical. I'm creative. These are approximate sketches of strengths, not precise maps. For the purpose of designing work you don't hate, you need precision. The question to ask is not, what am I good at? In the abstract, it's what specific activities put me in a state of flow, where time passes without my noticing, where I feel genuinely competent and energized. And conversely, what specific activities feel like swimming upstream, where even when I do them well, I feel drained and resentful. The answers to these questions are the most important data point in designing your professional life. Map them honestly. They will tell you more about where you should be going than any career test or aptitude questionnaire. The myth of the perfect job. Here's a belief that causes enormous unnecessary suffering. The belief that there exists a job, a specific role, at a specific company, in a specific industry, that will be perfect. That will eliminate all friction. That will feel like calling rather than work. That will never, on any morning, produce even a trace of the Sunday night feeling. This job does not exist. Every role in every organization, at every level, has components that are tedious, frustrating, politically complicated, or simply unrewarding. The goal is not zero friction. The goal is meaningful friction, the kind that comes from doing hard things you care about rather than meaningless friction, the kind that comes from doing pointless things you resent. The person who is waiting for the perfect job to appear is the same person who is waiting for the perfect partner, the perfect city, the perfect moment to start. They are waiting for a thing that doesn't exist. And in doing so, missing the thing that does, a genuinely good enough situation, embraced with intention, and built upon over time. Part 9, the practical toolkit. 30 actions you can take this week. Everything above is framework. Frameworks without action are just interesting thoughts. Here is a practical toolkit organized by path. Things you can actually begin doing in the next 7 days. If your path is fix it, 1. Write down the 3 most specific things that are making you miserable. Not general grievances, specific behaviors, situations, or patterns. 2. Identify which of those 3 are within the sphere of influence of a direct conversation. 3. Schedule time with your manager this week. Prepare for the conversation. What I observe, what I need, what I'd like to understand from you. 4. Research your market rate with precision. Spend 2 hours on Glassdoor, LinkedIn salary, and industry salary reports. 5. Write your contributions document. Every measurable thing you've delivered in the last 12 months, quantified wherever possible. 6. Identify one area of expansion, a project, skill, or initiative you could proactively take on to break out of your current ceiling. 7. Have at least one direct conversation this week that you have been postponing out of discomfort. If your path is leave it. 8. Define your 5 dimensions of the next role with specificity. Write them down. They are your filter. 9. Build your target company list. 20 to 30 specific organizations where the work, culture, and opportunity align with what you've defined. 10. Identify 10 people in your network with the proximity to those companies or industries. Not to ask for a job, but to ask for 20 minutes of their perspective. 11. Send 5 genuine, specific, value-forward outreach messages this week. Not mass messages, specific ones, referencing something real about the person's work or path. 12. Update your LinkedIn profile to reflect where you're going, not just where you've been. Your headline, summary, and featured section should tell the story of the person you're becoming. 13. Begin treating every interaction in your current job as a professional reference in the making. Deliver excellent work until the moment you walk out. 14. Set a departure date. Not a firm public commitment, a personal target. I want to be in a new role by X. Clarity on the when changes everything about the how. If your path is build past it. 15. Calculate your financial runway target. 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Where are you now? What's the gap? What's the weekly savings target to close it? 16. Identify the one skill that would most transform your professional options if you developed it over the next 6 months. One skill, not 5, 1. 17. Allocate a specific time block. Minimum 5 hours per week to building towards your exit. Put it on your calendar. Treat it like a meeting with your future self that cannot be canceled. 18. Start creating something in public. A post, an article, a short video, a project. Something that shows the world what you know and where you're headed. 19. Do one thing this week that generates even $1 of income outside your current employer. The psychological effect of the first external dollar is disproportionate to its size. 20. Identify your minimum viable side project. The smallest possible version of the alternative income stream you can build without overwhelming yourself. Start there. 21. Tell one trusted person what you're building toward. The things we say out loud to people we respect become more real than the things we keep inside. Conclusion. You are not built to dread Mondays. Let me say something that might be the most important thing in this entire essay. You are not supposed to hate your job. Not as a cosmic guarantee, life doesn't come with those, but as a baseline expectation. The standard operating condition of a functioning adult professional life should not be dread. It should not be the slow erosion of your personality over years of misalignment. It should not be the daily performance of being fine when you're not. Work takes 1/3 of your waking life, a full third. If that third is characterized by misery, by boredom, by resentment, by the feeling that you are pouring the irreplaceable hours of your finite existence into something that has nothing to do with who you are or what you're capable of, that is not a small problem. That is a significant human tragedy happening in a slow motion. And it is not inevitable. The path out is not easy. It requires honesty about what's actually wrong. It requires patience to build before you burn. It requires courage to have difficult conversations, make uncomfortable moves, and sit with the anxiety of change. It requires discipline to build the financial runway, develop the skills, create the reputation, and take the steps that lead somewhere better. None of that is easy. But here's what I know about the people who do the work. They stop dreading Sundays. Not because their job becomes perfect, not because every Monday is a revelation of meaning and purpose, but because they made a deliberate decision to stop accepting a situation that was slowly diminishing them. And they took the steps, one at a time, to build something different. You made it to the end of this essay. That means something. It means the dread you feel is not comfortable enough to ignore anymore. It means part of you already knows that something has to change. Trust that part. Give it a plan. And then give it 30 actions it can take this week. The Sunday night feeling is a signal. Now you know what to do with it.